A Lady Cyclist's Guide to Kashgar, a novel. By Suzanne Joinson. Narrated by Susan Duerden. Copyright 2012 by Suzanne Joinson. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Bloomsbury, USA, and was produced in the year 2012 by Tantor Media Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. Here the bird's journey ends, our journey, the journey of words, and after us there will be a horizon for the new birds. We are the ones who forge the sky's copper, the sky that will carve roads after us and make amends with our names above the distant cloud slopes. Soon we will descend the widow's descent in the memory fields and raise our tent to the final winds. Blow for the poem to live, and blow on the poem's road. After us, the plants will grow and grow over roads only we have walked and our obstinate steps inaugurated. And we will etch on the final rocks, long live life, and fall into ourselves. And after us, there'll be a horizon for the new birds. Here the bird's journey ends, Mahmoud Darwish. A bird of the air shall carry the voice, and that which hath wings shall tell the matter. Ecclesiastes, chapter 10, verse 20. A Lady Cyclist's Guide to Kashgar. Notes. A few things to remember. Study the country you are to travel and the road surface. Understand your map, know your route, its general direction, etc. Always observe the road you cover. Keep a small notebook and jot down everything of interest. Maria E. Ward, Bicycling for Ladies, 1896. Kashgar, East Turkestan, May 1st, 1923. I unhappily report that even Bicycling for Ladies, with hints as to the art of wheeling, advice to beginners, dress, care of the bicycle, mechanics, training, exercises, etc., etc., cannot assist me in this current predicament. We find ourselves in a situation. I may as well begin with the bones. They were scalded, sun-bleached like tiny flutes, and I called out to the carter to stop. It was early evening. Anxious to reach our destination, we had travelled, in the English fashion, through the hottest part of the day. They were bird bones piled in front of a tamarisk tree, and I suppose my fate could be read from the pattern they made in the dust, if I only knew how to see it. This was when I heard the cry, an unholy noise coming from behind a gathering of dead poplar trunks, whose presence did nothing to alleviate the desolate nature of this particular desert plain. I climbed down, looking behind me for Millicent and my sister Elizabeth, but could see neither. Millicent prefers horseback to carts. It is easier for her to stop at will to smoke a Hatterman's cigarette. For 5 hours, our path had followed a downhill descent through a dusty basin, its deepest part dotted with tamarisk trees, emerging from the mounds of blown soil and sand that had accumulated around the roots. And then, these dead poplars. Twisted stems of grey-barked saxel clustered between the trunks, and behind this bracken was a girl on her knees, hunched forward and making an extraordinary noise, much like a bray. In no hurry, the carter joined me, and together we stood watching her. He chewing on his splinter of wood, insolent and sly like all of his type, saying nothing. She looked up at us then. She was about 10 or 11 years old, with a belly as ripe as a halmy melon. The carter simply stared, and before I could speak, the girl fell forward, her face onto the ground, mouth open as if to eat the dust, and continued her unnerving groans. Behind me, I heard the crack of Millicent's horse's hooves on the loose stoned pathway. "She's about to give birth," I said, guessing. Millicent, our appointed leader, representative of the missionary order of the steadfast face, our benefactress, took an age to extract herself from the saddle. Hours of travelling had evidently stiffened her. Insects vibrated around us, drawn out by the slackening heat. I watched Millicent. Nothing could be a more incongruous sight in the desert than she, gracelessly dismounting with her dominant nose cutting the air, and a large ruby ring on her hand, at odds with the rest of her mannish dress. So young, just a child. Millicent bent down and whispered to the girl in Turkey. Whatever she said provoked a shout, and then came terrible sobs. "It's happening. We'll need forceps, I think." Millicent instructed the carter to bring forward the supply cart, and began fumbling through our possessions, looking for the medical kit. As she did, I saw that a group of women, men and children, a large family perhaps, were coming along the track towards us, pointing and nudging each other with astonishment at us foreign devils with hair like pig straw, standing as real as anything on their path. Millicent looked up at them, then used her preacher voice. "Stay back and give us room, please." Clearly shocked at her accurate words, repeated in both Chinese and Turkey, they arranged themselves as if positioning for a photograph, only hushing when the girl in the dust leaned forward on hands and knees and screamed loud enough to kill trees. "Eva! Support her, quickly!" The crying child, with damp hair hanging down, whose swollen stomach was an abomination, looked to me like a dribbling wildcat, and I did not want to touch her. Nonetheless, kneeling in the dust in front of her, I pulled her head onto my knees and attempted to stroke her. I heard Millicent ask an elderly woman for help, but the hag shrank away, as if contact with us would contaminate her. The wretched girl's face buried against my legs. I felt a wetness from her mouth. Possibly she tried to bite, but then abruptly she heaved away, back onto the ground. Millicent wrestled with her, turning her over onto her back. The girl let out pitiful cries. "Hold her head," Millicent said. I tried to hold her still as Millicent opened her knees and pushed them down with her elbows. The material around her groin came off easily. My sister still had not arrived. She too prefers to travel by horseback, so that she can go at whim into the desert to photograph sand. She believes that she can capture sight of him in the grains and dunes. The burning sand will become a pool, the thirsty ground bubbling springs. In the haunts where jackals once lay, grass and reeds and papyrus will grow. These and other words she sings, in the peculiar high voice she has acquired since being fully possessed with the forces of religion. I looked round for her, but it was futile. I can still hear those screams now, a hideous, anguished noise, as Millicent pushed her finger into flesh, creating a space for the forceps until a combination of blood and some other liquid came out, streaking her wrist. "We should not do this," I said. "Let's move her into the town instead. There must be someone more experienced than us." "No time. All-merciful Christ, look upon us and preserve us." Millicent did not look at me. "Thy servants from fear and evil spirits, which hope to destroy the work of thy hands." Forceps pushed in, turn a scream that was white-pitched murder. "Lord, alleviate the hardships of our pregnancy," Millicent said, tugging, pulling as she incanted, "and grant us the strength and fortitude to give birth, and enable this with thine all-powerful help." "We should not do this," I repeated. The girl's hair was soaked, and her eyes were unseeing and panic-filled, like a horse in a thunderstorm. Millicent tipped her own head back so that her eyeglasses retreated along her nose. Then, with a quick movement, she wrenched as if pulling up an anchor, until a blue-red creature came slithering out, along with a great swill of watery substance, and was caught, like a fish, in Millicent's hands. Blood from the young mother quickly formed a red crescent in the dust. Millicent put her knife to the umbilical cord. Lizzie came then, like a camera in hand, wearing our uniform of black satin trousers covered with a dark blue silk skirt and a black Chinese cotton overcoat. Her skirt hem was blotted with a pink dust that engulfs everything here. She stood, staring at the scene before her, like a lost girl at the edge of a fairground. "Lizzie, get water!" Millicent's knife separated forever the baby from its mother, who shuddered, her head lolling back, as if the fish baby loudly demanded to be let into heaven. The crescent continued to grow. "She's losing too much blood," Millicent said. The girl's face had turned to the side. She no longer struggled. "What can we do?" Millicent began a soft prayer that I could not hear very well beneath the cries of the baby. "We should move her, find help," I said, but Millicent did not respond. I watched her lift the mother's hand. She shook her head, did not look up at me. "Millicent, no!" I spoke uselessly, but I could not believe it. A life disappeared in front of us, down into the desert cracks, as simple as a shift in the clouds. Immediately, there was an uproar from our gaping spectators. "What are they saying, Lizzie?" I shouted. I could not look at the pitiful girl, her face still now, though blood kept coming from between her legs, a hopeful tide looking for a shore. Lizzie stared at the red tracks on Millicent's wrists. "They are saying we have killed this girl," she said, "and that we have stolen her heart to protect ourselves from the sandstorms." "What?" The faces in the crowd dared to come close to me, rushing against me, placing their hands with black nails on me. I pushed the hands away. "They say we have taken the girl to give ourselves strength, and that we plan to steal the baby and eat it." Lizzie spoke quickly, in that odd, high voice. Her ability with this impenetrable Turkey language is much better than mine. "She died in childbirth. Natural causes, as you can all very well see." Millicent shouted uselessly in English, and then repeated it in Turkey. Lizzie set about bringing water in our tankards and a blanket. "They are demanding that we are shot." "Nonsense." Millicent took the blanket from Lizzie, and they stood together, a lady and her handmaiden. "Now who?" Millicent held the screeching baby high up, as if it were a severed head, an offering. "We'll take this baby!" There was not a sound from the disbelieving faces watching her. "Who is responsible for this baby girl? Is there a relative?" I knew already. No one wanted her. None of that crowd even looked at the girl in the dust, just a child herself, or at the blood becoming earth. Insects walked on her legs already. Lizzie held the blanket out, and Millicent wrapped the furious, wailing scrap of bone and skin into a bundle. Without saying anything, she handed it to me. We were then escorted by the family elder and his son to Kashgar's city gates, where, through whatever magical form of communication, notice of our arrival had already been received. The magistrate's court was open, despite it being early evening, and a Chinese official brought in, because, although this is a Muslim Turkic area, it is ruled by the Chinese. Our carts were searched through, our possessions analysed. They took my bicycle from the back of the cart, and it, as well as us, I suppose, attracted a large crowd. Bicycles are rarely seen here, and a woman riding one is simply unimaginable. Millicent explained. "We are missionaries, entirely peaceful. We came upon the young mother as we approached your city." Then, "Sit as still as the Buddha," she whispered. "Indifference is best in situations like these." The baby's skull was a curious hot thing in my hand. Not soft, but neither hard. A padded shell filled with new blood. This was the first time I had ever held a baby so new. And a baby girl. I wrapped her in the blanket, tight, and held her against me in an effort to soothe the angry fists and the purple-red face of a raging soul howling with indignation and terror. Eventually, she swooned into an exhausted sleep. I checked her every moment, fearful that she would die. We struggled to sit as still as we could. There were murmurs and discussions in the fast local dialect. Millicent and Lizzie hissed at me. "Cover your hair!" I quickly adjusted my scarf. Like my mother's, my hair is a terrible bright red, and in this region it seems to be a sensation. Along the last stage of our journey, from Osh to Kashgar in particular, men stared with open mouths as if I were naked, as if I were cavorting before them with wings on my back and silver rings in my nose. In the villages, children ran towards me, pointing, then moved backwards as though scared, until I was done with it and covered my head with a scarf like a Mohammedan. This worked, but it had fallen off during the scuffle in the dust. Millicent translated. Due to the accusations of the witnesses, we were to undergo a trial, charged with murder and witchcraft, or the summoning of devils. Or rather, Millicent was. She was the one who had held the baby aloft and had used her knife on the girl. "We will have to bribe our way out of this," Millicent whispered to us. Her face was as hard as the sun-charred desert earth. "We will give you the money," Millicent said, her voice quiet but clear. "Though we have to send a message to our supporters in Shanghai and Moscow, which will take some days."
"You will be our guests,"
the official responded.
"Our great city of Kashi is pleasure to host you."
We are, therefore, forced to remain in this pink, dusty basin. Not under house arrest exactly, though as we must have permission to leave the house, it seems. I confess, I fail to see the difference. London, present day. Pimlico. Lighting the scented candles had been a mistake. Now the room smelled like a synthetic pine forest. Frieda blew them out with an excessive puff-puff at each one. It was 1:20 a.m. She closed the window, pulling the sash frame down with a bang, and looked in the mirror. Her silk vest was the colour of the inside of a shell, cool, silver, shivery, and its pearl shade faded and melted her down. She glanced around for a cardigan and tipped the bottle of wine she had opened to let breathe down the sink, watching for a moment the blood swill of it drain away. It could breathe as much as it wanted now. From the smell, it was rough stuff anyway. At least I didn't cook for him. She looked at her phone on the table. Not a call, a text, anything. She deliberated, vaguely, over the thought of running a bath, but didn't have the energy for submergence, or the decision of when to get out. Mascara came off with a cotton pad. The last time she was in bed with Nathaniel, several months or so earlier, he had said,
"I can't believe you let grubby me lie beside you."
She rubbed her face with a towel. She couldn't believe she let him either. 3 cacti stood along the windowsill like tired soldiers waiting for instructions. She put a finger against a yellow spike of the largest one and pushed onto it to get the sting, but the spike was soft and fell off at her touch. The cacti had anemic patches all over them. They were in need of tending. She went to the kitchen. Children come first. That's how it is. If there were a contest or a selection process or a ranking system, then children would always win. Top priority, the boys. Afflicted, apparently, with disrupted nights, perpetually waking up to check that Daddy is there, to make sure he is breathing in the room, that his hand is near to their head, that they will never be left alone in the dark. Their dreams come scarily, monsters, pirates, and loneliness, as do thoughts they can't control or articulate properly yet. The last thing they want is for him to disappear to the garage for cigarettes, for milk, for a few hours in the middle of the night. Her palms were itchy, hot, then cold. It had all worked well with Nathaniel for a while, the balance of freedom and intimacy.
"You're a free spirit, Free. You come, you go."
The travelling and the landing, the hot, profound, close impulsiveness of him. It used to leave her body light and her daily existence unreal and immaterial, so that it did not matter that he wasn't in much of it. She was in control back then, when Nathaniel suggested that he leave his wife to come and be with her. But she refused. She did not want 3 little boys' battered hearts upon her conscience. Though, there was more to it. He was one of those men who needed tending, like her patchy cacti. She wanted none of that. She stood at the kitchen sink. Her first night back, and he'd missed it. Cool fingers of September air came in from somewhere. Outside, a train appeared, heading for Victoria Station. Electrical lines above the tracks linked and flashed, creating a line of light that sliced Frieda's face and neck like a laser so that she was exposed for a second, a hung X-ray in white light, and then thrown immediately back into darkness. It was a relief to be home. That last trip, the last hotel, was not at all fun. A 4-star, but with no room service and an empty minibar. Police and military vans moving around the square outside the hotel, and loud speakers booming instructions. The internet had been turned off by the authorities across the entire region, and the streets were empty, apart from packs of soldiers jogging in groups of 8, holding riot shields. She had stood at the window staring at her phone, as if it were a broken heart in her palm. It flashed up disconnect every time she tried to make an international call. Some sort of civil unrest. But she had no way of knowing what was happening. She just knew she wasn't meant to be there. Where? It didn't really matter. The cities were blending into one now. It was just yet another place that was no longer safe for her to be in. Being English. Being a woman. Actually, it was the English part that was the problem. In taxis, she always told drivers she was Irish. Nobody hates the Irish anymore. She had booked the first possible flight home, and all through the long journey had thought of Nathaniel. In the airport lounge, that existential zone for the lonely traveller, it occurred to her that lately the balance of control was ambiguous. Nathaniel's unreliability brought out a brutal, almost paralysing frustration in her. She was feeling something new in herself, and with horror realised that it was neediness, or worse, a craving for consistency. For the first time, her work was not enough. There was a cough at the door. Damn! Just as she had taken all of her makeup off. She walked towards the door, but stopped. There it was again. It wasn't Nathaniel. She waited several moments, and then walked quietly to the spy hole. The nightlight was on in the stairwell, and a man was sitting on the floor just outside her door, with his back against the wall, legs stretched out in front of him. His eyes were closed, but he did not look asleep. Frieda jumped backwards, with her heart whacking against her chest, but she could not resist peeping out again. He was facing her now, as if he could see right through the door. She thought he was going to stand up, come towards her, but he glanced down at his hand and did not move. He was holding a pen. She went as quietly as she could back into the kitchen. There was a number on the pinboard for the City Guardians, a Christian group of volunteers responsible for cleaning up streets and clearing off the homeless. She could always phone that, or the police. There was the double lock on the door, but if she put that on now, he would hear it, and she would only draw attention to herself. She moved into the living room instead, and returned to the window. In the street, the group of kids with their mobile phones had gone, and there seemed to be nobody left out there. Just the rain, and the concrete swelling in the wetness, and the shake of trees sagging under water. At intervals, she heard the cough from the stairwell. A city fox, scrawny and barely coated, flashed underneath the skip bins. Frieda looked down the empty, wet street and made a decision. From a cupboard, she pulled out a pillow and a blanket. She took another look. He was curled up on the floor now. She could just see his bent back, his leather jacket, the black scruff of his hair. It was undoubtedly inadvisable to let him know that there was a young woman living here, probably alone, but she opened the door anyway. The man immediately scrambled himself up into a sitting position and looked at her. He had a moustache and sleepy-looking eyes. Not an unpleasant face. Frieda didn't say anything, didn't smile, but handed him the pillow and the blanket and quickly closed the door. 5 minutes later, she looked again through the peephole. He was sitting with a blanket wrapped around his legs, leaning against the wall, with the pillow propped behind his head, smoking a cigarette. In the morning, she found the blanket folded up, with the pillow balancing on top of it, and on the wall next her door was a large drawing of a bird, long beak, peculiar legs and a feathery tail. It was not a bird she could identify. There were some words in Arabic, and although she actually had elementary Arabic, she wasn't up to understanding what it said. Below, in English, was written, "As the great poet says, you are afflicted, like me, with a bird's journey." Next to the bird was a swirl of peacock feathers, and alongside that, an intricate drawing of a boat made out of a flock of seagulls, the seagulls floating off and forming a sunset. Frieda walked out of the doorway to have a proper look. She touched the black marks with her finger, then leaned over the railing to look down the spiral of the receding staircase. The cleaner was on the ground floor with his mop. He looked up at her and nodded. A Lady Cyclist's Guide to Kashgar. Notes. For beginners. Mount and away. How easy it seems. To the novice, it is not as easy as it looks. Yet everyone, or almost everyone, can learn to ride, though there are different ways of going about it. May 2nd. We have been put up in a Muslim inn because we are considered too unlucky for the Chinese to house. We are guests at this inn of harmonious brotherhood, and I am minded of the words of Marco Polo about this heat-crushed city.
The people of Kashgar have an astonishing acquaintance with the devilries of enchantment, inasmuch as they make their idols to speak. They can also, by their sorceries, bring about changes in the weather, and produce darkness, and do a number of things so extraordinary that no one without seeing them would believe them.
I can believe it. It would not surprise me to see the devil lurking in every corner of this courtyard to which we are confined. This morning, as we waited for Millicent, Lizzie and I strained to see the women in veils and drapes as they fluttered back and forth. They wear gaudy scarves over tunics and vibrant headscarves, and though faces are covered, it is possible to guess who is handsome and who is less so from the artfulness of the headwear arrangement. They are more colourful than I expected. We were seated on the floor, on bright bolsters and cushions, in a reception area room that led on to the courtyard. Lizzie sat opposite me, flicking at her precious camera. Outside the main entrance to this inn is a wooden sign with the words, "One True Religion," painted across it in red. Tin pots line the shelves in the cramped kitchen, and embellished, ornamental teapots with complicated handles made from bone are proudly placed in the divan room. Our host, Mohammed, pours green-coloured bitter tea for us himself, holding his curious teapot high above the cups, allowing the stream of liquid to lengthen like a twinkling rope. Breakfast is served on large copper trays, arranged so that we can look out towards the centrepiece of the house, a small fountain whose running water falls into a shallow pool that is decorated with a scattering of rose and geranium petals. Carved columns of poplar wood lead up to the rafters, and a colourful balcony encases a second floor of rooms. The running water, in this thirsty desert area, is, I suppose, an ever-flowing symbol of this Mohammed's personal wealth. There are so many of them. Millicent says it is a combination of wives and daughters. Lizzie, I want to ask about the baby. Do you think she is alive? Lizzie shrugged. Mohammed returned, and methodically covered the table with pitchers full of the juices of peaches and melons.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?